The airlock door was already sliding open when I heard her voice cut through the hangar noise, sharp and broken, screaming my name. I did not turn around at first. My bag was on my shoulder, my boots were already past the yellow line painted on the floor, and every guard in that hangar had orders to let me walk. 3 months of my life had been spent inside the Velmoran Palace, fixing what their engineers called impossible problems, and now the council had decided I was finished. No thank you, no handshake, just a ship waiting to take me back to whatever was left of my old life. Then I heard running feet, fast and uneven, slapping against the metal floor like she did not care who saw her. Don't go. I turned around and saw Princess Leora sprinting across the hangar, her long ceremonial robe torn at the hem where she had stepped on it, her guards frozen behind her like they did not know if they were allowed to stop a member of the royal bloodline. Her eyes were wet, her breath coming out in short gasps, and for a moment nobody in that hangar moved except her. Leora, I said, keeping my voice calm even though my heart was pounding. What happened? She stopped in front of me, chest heaving, and grabbed the front of my jacket like she was afraid I would vanish if she let go. They lied to you, she said. The council told you the threat was gone. It is not gone. It is worse than before, and they know it. And they let you walk out that door anyway. Behind her, I saw Commander Dresk push through the crowd of guards, his face tight with anger, not at me, but at her. Princess, step away from the human. This is not your matter. It became my matter the moment they decided to sacrifice him, she snapped back, not letting go of my jacket. I felt the floor shift slightly under my boots, a low vibration that any engineer would recognize immediately. Something big was moving somewhere beneath the palace, and it was not machinery I had installed. What threat? I said quietly. Tell me exactly what threat, right now. Leora looked at Dresk, then back at me, and lowered her voice like the walls themselves might be listening. The core reactor beneath the throne room, the one you repaired 6 weeks ago, it was never actually stable. The council knew. They told the engineers to hide the readings from you because they were afraid you would demand payment to stay and fix it properly. My stomach dropped. That reactor powered not just the palace, but the shield grid protecting 3 cities beneath it. If it failed, we were not talking about an inconvenience. We were talking about a collapse that would kill everyone inside a 50-mile radius. How long? I asked. The engineers estimate 6 hours, she said. Maybe less. Dresk stepped forward, his hand resting on the weapon at his hip, though he did not draw it. This conversation ends here. The human's contract is finished. We will handle the reactor ourselves. With what? I said, turning to face him fully. The same engineers who hid the readings from me the first time? The same council that decided lying to a guest was easier than admitting they needed help? Dresk's jaw tightened, but he said nothing, because he knew I was right, and everyone in that hangar knew it too. I looked down at Leora, who still had not let go of my jacket. Her hands were shaking, not from fear of the reactor exactly, but from fear of what would happen to her people if it failed, and maybe, a small part of me thought, fear of watching me walk away and never coming back. Take me to the reactor, I said, now. The walk back through the palace corridors felt nothing like the walk out. Guards who had ignored me on my way to the hangar now cleared a path without being asked. Servants pressed themselves against the walls. Leora walked beside me the entire way, matching my pace, refusing to fall behind even when Dresk tried to get between us. Why did you come after me? I asked her quietly, as we passed through a corridor lined with old paintings of Velmoran kings. You could have sent a guard. You could have sent Dresk. She was quiet for a moment before answering. Because none of them would have told you the truth. They would have brought you back with orders, not with honesty. I did not want you to walk into this because someone commanded it. I wanted you to choose it. That answer stayed with me the entire rest of the walk. We reached the reactor chamber, a wide circular room built 2 levels beneath the throne room, humming with a sound that was just slightly wrong, a pitch too low, a rhythm too uneven. 3 Velmoran engineers stood near the control panel, looking pale and exhausted, clearly aware that their small deception had turned into something they could no longer control alone. Show me the readings, I said, walking straight to the panel. All of them, not the filtered version. One of the engineers, a thin man named Farol, hesitated only a second before pulling up the real data. My eyes moved across the numbers fast, the way they always did when something needed fixing immediately. The containment field around the reactor core was destabilizing in a pattern I recognized, a slow cascading failure that would start small and then collapse all at once, like a dam with a crack nobody wanted to admit was there. You patched the outer casing 6 weeks ago, I said, mostly to myself. But the real damage was always in the inner regulator. The outer patch bought time. It did not fix anything. "Can it be fixed?" Leora asked, standing close enough that I could hear the tension in her voice. "Maybe," I said, "but not with the tools you have here. I need access to the secondary conduit, the one behind the eastern wall, and I need everyone who is not helping me out of this room in the next 30 seconds. Dresk, who had followed us the entire way, finally spoke. "You want us to trust you completely, after everything?" I turned to look at him directly. "You do not have to trust me. You just have to get out of my way." There was a long pause, the kind that stretches out and makes every second feel heavier than it should. Then Dresk nodded once and began clearing the room himself, ordering the guards back, leaving only Farrell and one other engineer named Sina to assist me. For the next 2 hours I worked faster than I think I ever had in my life. Leora stayed the entire time, holding tools when I asked, reading numbers off the secondary display, translating quickly when Farrell or Sina said something in technical terms I did not immediately understand. She did not complain once, even when her hands were shaking from exhaustion, even when the heat from the exposed conduit made sweat run down both our faces. At one point, while I was reaching deep into the regulator housing, the entire chamber shook violently, and warning lights across the panel turned red all at once. "Containment breach in Section 4, Senna shouted. "I need 30 more seconds," I called back, my hands moving on instinct now, rerouting the failing regulator through a manual bypass I was building on the spot, something that did not exist in any manual, because nobody had ever needed to build it before. Leora grabbed my arm suddenly. "If this does not work, it will work," I said, cutting her off, not because I was certain, but because right then, certainty was the only thing keeping either of us steady. I finished the bypass with seconds to spare, sealing the housing and stepping back just as the warning lights across the panel flickered from red to yellow, and then, slowly, to a steady green. The wrong pitch in the humming sound faded, replaced by something smooth and even, the sound of a system that was finally, truly stable. Nobody spoke for a moment. Then Farrell let out a breath so loud it almost sounded like a laugh, and Senna sat down right where she was standing, her legs finally giving out from the tension. Leora turned to me, her eyes still wet, but this time not from fear. "You saved them," she said, "all 3 cities, because you chose to come back." "You're the one who came after me," I said. "If you had not run through that hangar, I would already be halfway to the transport station, and none of us would know any of this until it was too late." She smiled, tired and real, and for the first time since I had arrived in that palace, I saw something in her expression that was not politics, was not duty, was not the careful mask every noble in that court wore. It was simple relief, the kind that only comes after facing something that could have ended everything. Word of what happened spread through the palace within the hour. By the time we walked back up to the main hall, the same council that had dismissed me that morning was standing there waiting, and for once, none of them looked comfortable. The head counselor, an older man named Braylon, stepped forward stiffly. "It seems our earlier decision was made without full information." "It was made with hidden information," I corrected him. "There is a difference." He did not argue. He simply nodded, the closest thing to an apology I was likely to get from someone like him. Leora stepped up beside me, standing taller than I had seen her stand the entire time I had known her. "Restays," she said, not as a request, but as a statement, not as a servant, not as a tool to be used and dismissed when convenient, as someone this palace, and this council, clearly cannot afford to lose. Nobody argued with her either. Later that evening, I stood on the balcony outside the reactor wing, looking out over the 3 cities that were still standing, still lit, still breathing because a princess had refused to let me walk away without knowing the truth. Leora joined me quietly, leaning against the railing beside me. "You could have let me go," I said. "It would have been easier. No risk, no reactor, no chasing anyone through a hangar." "Easier is not always right," she said simply. "I learned that from watching you these past months. You never once chose easy, you chose what needed to be done." I looked out at the city lights, steady and unbroken, and realized that somewhere between fixing broken machines and surviving strange court politics, this place had become something more than just an assignment. "Well," I said, "looks like I am not done with this alien palace after all." Leora laughed, soft and genuine, and for the first time since I had arrived on this world, I did not feel like an outsider standing at the edge of something that was not mine. I felt like I had finally found the place I was supposed to stay.